Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're embarking on a pretty profound internal journey. We spend so much of our time endlessly analyzing the outside world, our jobs, the economy, our endless social media feeds. But today we are turning the lens entirely inward. We're going to decode the actual architecture of human happiness, dig into our deepest desires, and completely redefine how we interact with our own physical form. It's a real paradigm shift, so let's get into it. To kick things off, I want you to just take a second and reflect on a question that sits right at the center of the modern hustle. Why doesn't accumulating more things make us permanently happy? Seriously, think about it. We chase the latest gadgets, the bigger house, the trending clothes, fully expecting that once we finally get them, boom, lasting happiness. But that feeling always fades, doesn't it? The thrill is strictly temporary. Let's explore exactly why that happens. All right, section 1, the illusion of happiness. So we're going to decode this trap of materialism that honestly so many of us fall into without even realizing it. The source material calls this the gross misunderstanding loop. Basically, as humans, we have this deep, continuous need for qualitative feelings, right? Things like respect, love, and happiness. But step 2 is where we completely stumble. We try to fulfill those inner, continuous emotional needs with physical facilities, which is just a fancy term for material things. Think about that temporary little rush you get clicking buy now on a random pair of shoes at 2 in the morning while doom scrolling. Because you can literally never get enough physical stuff to fill an emotional void, you end up just wanting an unlimited amount of things. And the result? Step 3, a constant state of deprivation. You're basically trying to solve a qualitative need with a quantitative thing. It's kind of like trying to quench your thirst by turning up the radio. It's just a total category error. Moving on to section 2, the self versus the body. To actually break out of that deprivation loop, we need to understand a pretty stark juxtaposition. A human being is actually a coexistence of two completely distinct realities. The self, which is our consciousness, and the body, which is the material, and their needs entirely different. The self needs continuous happiness, respect, and right understanding. And because the self is consciousness, its needs can only be fulfilled by activities of consciousness, like having the right feelings. The body, on the other hand, well, it just needs physical facilities, things like food, water, or shelter. And here is the absolute crucial point. The body's needs are strictly temporary and quantitative. You only need a certain amount of food before you're full, right? But you'd never say, well, I've had enough respect for today. I think I'll take some disrespect now. The self's needs are continuous. Section 3, inside your imagination. Okay, now that we've separated the self from the body, we can actually map out what's going on inside that conscious self. The architecture of our mind, what the text collectively calls our imagination, runs on a continuous flow of information across 3 levels. At the very base is your desire. This is the power of imaging what you want to be within. It's your core feeling. So let's say you have a deep desire to feel respected. That desire flows up into the next level, thought, where you're analyzing and comparing how to actually go about fulfilling that feeling. Finally, it reaches expectation, where you select what to get from the outside world, like maybe expecting that buying a luxury watch will express that feeling of respect. And this constant stream of desire, thought, and expectation, it is running in the background of your mind every single second. Which brings us to section 4, motivations, enslavement or freedom. All right, so we know how the machine works, but we really need to question what's actually driving those desires and thoughts. There are 3 distinct sources of motivation for our imagination. The first is preconditioning. This is when we just assume something is valuable because society or our peers say so, completely without verifying it for ourselves. The second is sensation. That's assuming that sensory inputs from the outside, like sound, touch, or taste, are going to make us continuously happy. And the third is natural acceptance. This is our innate inner voice. It's our uncorrupted, universal human purpose, like truly wanting harmony and relationship. Let me give you an anecdote right from the source material. Imagine you're buying a bike. If you buy it simply because you like the shiny color and want to look cool to your friends, your desire is motivated by sensation and preconditioning. But if you buy that exact same bike to keep your body healthy and help you get to work, well, that desire is motivated by your natural acceptance. And honestly, this is a massive realization. When your desires are driven by preconditioning and sensation, you're literally in a state of enslavement. Your happiness becomes entirely dependent on outside influences, which, let's face it, you absolutely cannot control. And that leads straight to contradiction and unhappiness. But when your imagination is fully guided by your natural acceptance and right understanding, you enter a state of self-organization, true freedom. You achieve harmony within the self, which naturally leads to that continuous happiness we talked about earlier. Once you stop outsourcing your self-worth to algorithms and advertisements, you finally get your freedom back. Section 5.
The body as an instrument.
Armed with that understanding of our inner motivations, let's shift the paradigm again and redefine how we actually view our physical form. Just let this quote sink in for a second. I am the seer, the doer, and the enjoyer. Wow. This profound realization basically proves that the conscious self is central to human existence. Your eyes don't see on their own, right? The self sees through the eyes. The body doesn't act on its own. The self decides to act and uses the body to do it. The self is the one who actually experiences the joy or the pain. The body is merely an incredibly sophisticated vehicle. It's an instrument for the self. And what's really fascinating here is how beautifully simple the transaction between consciousness and material actually is. It's purely an exchange of information. That's it. The self decides what to do and sends an instruction to the body. The body then physically performs the action. Then, the body, through its five senses, reads the environment and sends sensations right back to the self, and the self reads that sensation by choice. It's just a continuous, elegantly designed loop of instruction and sensation. So, what is our responsibility in all of this? Well, when a self is self-regulated and operating out of that natural acceptance we talked about, it naturally takes responsibility for nurturing and protecting its instrument. This means starting with a really firm foundation of harmonious intake. Nutritious food, water, air, and keeping a daily routine that aligns with natural circadian rhythms. From there, it involves adequate labor and exercise to keep the gears moving smoothly. Then we focus on regulating our postures and our breathing. And finally, we only resort to medicine or mechanical treatment as an absolute last resort when the body encounters a temporary disharmony that it just can't fix on its own. Section 6, From Reaction to Response. Okay, let's bring all these deep philosophical concepts into practical, everyday behavior. How do we actually apply this to achieve inner harmony when we're interacting with other people? It all comes down to reacting versus responding. When you react, you are enslaved. You're deciding your feelings based entirely on the behavior of the other person. If someone cuts you off in traffic and you explode in anger, you have essentially handed the remote control of your happiness over to a total stranger. But when you respond, you are self-organized. You base your feelings unconditionally on your own natural acceptance. You look at their bad behavior simply as an indicator of their current state of mind, but you consciously choose your own right feeling. And that is what leads to definite, harmonious conduct, no matter what crazy situation is going on around you. And that brings us to our final thought for today. Are you deciding your life, or is your preconditioning deciding it for you? Who actually holds the remote control to your happiness? By observing our desires, understanding the duality of our existence, and tuning into our natural acceptance, we can finally take that remote control back. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep exploring, stay curious, and I'll catch you next time.